was always something magical about old bookstores, the kind that smelled of aged paper and dust, where the shelves creaked under the weight of forgotten stories. I never thought I'd find anything extraordinary in one, though. That was until the day I found the book. I had spent the afternoon wandering through the narrow streets of my city, killing time before meeting up with my friends. My feet led me into a small, hidden bookstore tucked between two tall buildings. The wooden door creaked as I stepped inside, and the scent of old paper and leather wrapped around me. It was quiet, peaceful, just the kind of place I could spend hours in. The shop was a maze of towering bookshelves, each crammed with novels, journals, and handwritten letters. The air felt thick with untold stories, and the soft hum of the fluorescent lights above created a soothing background noise. I was just about to leave when a peculiar book caught my eye. It sat on a shelf, hidden behind a row of heavy history books. Its cover was a faded shade of red, its title worn out. No author's name, no publisher's mark. Just a simple, weathered label that read, "The Book of Time." I reached out for it, my fingers brushing the cover as though it were calling to me. Something about it felt different. As soon as I held it in my hands, a chill ran down my spine, but my curiosity overpowered any fear I felt. I flipped it open. The pages were blank. At least, at first glance they were. But as I ran my fingers over the paper, words began to appear, slowly forming sentences as if the book was writing itself. I blinked, certain that my eyes were playing tricks on me. But when I looked again, the words were clearer. To understand the past, you must first enter it. To enter, simply read aloud the words on the next page. I gasped. The message was almost too strange to believe. I turned to the next page, my hands trembling. As I read aloud, the words seemed to come alive. Take a step into time and let the past be your guide. I stopped. Nothing happened. For a moment, I stood there, laughing nervously at myself. I must have been imagining things. Maybe the old bookshop owner had a sense of humor, or maybe I had been reading too many fantasy novels lately. But as I was about to close the book, I noticed something strange. The world around me began to blur. The shelves, the dust, the dim lighting, it all started to dissolve. In an instant, I was no longer standing in the bookstore. I was somewhere else entirely. I found myself in the middle of a bustling street, but it wasn't the city I knew. The buildings were older, with cobblestone roads underfoot. Women in long dresses and men in suits hurried past, horse-drawn carriages rattling by. The air was thick with the smell of coal, and the sound of street vendors selling their goods filled the air. I looked around, completely disoriented. The book was still in my hands, and it had stopped glowing. I wasn't sure what was happening, but one thing was clear. I had somehow been transported to the past. I didn't know what year it was, but I was certain it wasn't my time. I walked down the street, trying to blend in with the crowd, hoping that someone could explain what had just happened. But no one noticed me. It was as though I had become a part of the scene, an invisible observer in this forgotten world. As I wandered, I saw an old building, its stone facade weathered with time. Above the door was a sign that read, "Public Library." Could it be? Maybe this place held the answers I was looking for. I entered the library and was immediately struck by how quiet it was. The room was lined with tall bookshelves, and the faint sound of pages turning echoed in the air. I made my way toward the counter where an elderly woman sat, reading a book. Her gray hair was tied into a neat bun, and she looked up as I approached. Her eyes widened for a moment as though she recognized me, but then her expression softened. "Can I help you, young man?" she asked in a voice that was warm and inviting. I hesitated. How could I explain what was happening to me? Instead, I simply nodded. "I think I'm lost," I said, trying to sound casual. She studied me for a moment, her gaze sharp, yet kind. "The past can be a tricky place to navigate," she said, almost as if she knew what I was going through. "But sometimes we have to be lost to find what we need." I didn't understand what she meant, but her words stayed with me. I looked around the library and saw that every book on the shelf seemed to be about history about people, places, and events long gone. It was as if the entire library was a collection of the past waiting to be unlocked. I glanced down at the Book of Time in my hands, and in that moment, I realized that this wasn't just a coincidence. The book had brought me here. It had opened a door to the past, and now I had to find my way back. But how? The book had no instructions, no clear path. The only thing I had was the note it had given me. To understand the past, you must first enter it. Had I done that already? Was I supposed to learn something while I was here? As I continued to ponder, a young boy walked up to the counter. He was dressed in clothes similar to the ones the people in the street had been wearing, and he held a small bundle of books in his arms. The librarian smiled at him warmly. "Ah, Thomas, you've come for your usual books, I see." Thomas grinned, his eyes sparkling. "Yes, Miss Evans, I'm going to learn about the Great Fire of 1875. I want to be ready for my history exam." The librarian chuckled softly. "I'm sure you will, Thomas." As I watched them interact, something clicked. The past. It wasn't just a place, it was a collection of moments, of stories waiting to be told. And the more I learned, the more I understood that I could change my own story. Before I could think too much about it, I turned to leave. But as I did, the library faded from view, and I found myself back in the bookstore. The world had returned to normal, the smell of paper and dust surrounding me once again. The book was closed in my hands, and the words had disappeared from the pages. Had it all been a dream, a hallucination? I looked around the store, but the elderly woman wasn't there. No one else was. I was alone. I left the bookstore in a daze, the book still in my hands, and wondered if I would ever be able to understand what had just happened. Would I ever go back to that place? Would I ever understand what the book was trying to tell me? I didn't know. But I did know one thing. Sometimes, to understand the present, you need to visit the past. And I would always carry the Book of Time with me, waiting for the next chapter to unfold.